Good evening, everyone, and thanks for coming out tonight as we explore the topic of God's purpose with the earth. We often think about and we often talk about what is the purpose of life, and when we're thinking about that, we think about, well, how can we make our mark on society, or how can we leave a legacy to the world around us? But life as we know it wouldn't be possible without the earth. Let's consider how amazing that earth is that we are on. Think about how the temperature is just at that perfect to be able to survive. The sun's the right distance away, the pressure right, the air quality is able so we can breathe, the water's drinkable, the seasons come and go. The systems are in place that human beings can live on the earth. They're really basic things, but they're needs for survival. And yet, the place we call Earth sustains life. At the moment, though, if you have any news feeds in your life, you would think that the world is trying to be destructed, or the humans are trying to destruct the world when you hear about threats of nuclear war, things like climate change and disease. So the question seems more likely at the moment is, will humans make the Earth uninhabitable? Right from the outset, we're going to use the Bible as a basis for our discussion tonight. I'm not here to prove the legitimacy of the Bibles and the ins and outs of it, but that's going to be our basis, that God's inspired word. And we're going to look through some quotes from the Bible to talk about what the purpose with the earth is. So there's a number of quotes that we are going to look through tonight. Some we're going to be turning up, some I'll read off the screen. So we'll be going through a journey together to see what God's purpose with the earth is. So right from the outset, we have these couple of quotes here that prove that the earth isn't going to be destroyed. So one generation passeth away and another generation cometh, but the earth abideth forever. And the foundation of the earth should not be removed forever in Psalm 104. And in Isaiah 45 it says the earth is formed to be inhabited. God didn't form it in vain. So we're already comforted by those couple of quotes that humans aren't going to kill each other and make the world uninhabitable. The earth is to be abide forever. It shall not be removed. So what was the purpose of creation at the start of the Bible? In the beginning of the Bible, we've got documented the events of God creating the heavens and the earth, and all that creepeth on the earth, and we see in the record of creation in Genesis. In Genesis 1 verse 28 it says, "And God blessed them," and it's Adam and Eve, "and God said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and everything that moveth upon it." We see here that God's instruction to man, so we see here that God talks about subduing and having dominion over all that is on the earth. Those words subduing and dominion are military terms used speaking of when one wins in a war, they subdue the other. But at the moment, do we think humans have full dominion or fully subdued everything that moveth on the earth? We will continue with the thought then about going through other sections. So we're going to look in Genesis as well, with the promises to Abraham. So the promises to Abraham and Isaac are another section where we can see the promises outlined and the plan with the earth outlined. So in Genesis 13 and verse 14 to 18, we have here a promise made to a person called Abraham, or Abram. And the Lord said unto Abram, after that Lot had separated from him, Lift up now thine eyes, and look from the place where thou art, northward and southward, eastward and westward. For all the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever. And I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man could number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed be numbered. Arise, walk through the land, the length of it and the breadth of it, for I will give it to thee. Then Abraham removed his tent and came and dwelt in the plain of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and built an altar unto the Lord. And then in Genesis 17, we have continued, and I will give unto thee and to thy seed after thee the land wherein thou art a stranger, and all the land of Canaan as an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. And finally, in Genesis 26, it speaks about being a sojourner in the land. I will be with thee, and I'll bless thee for unto thee and unto thy seed, and I'll give all these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swear to Abraham thy father, and I will make thy seed to multiply as the stars in heaven, and I'll give unto thy seed all these countries, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge and my commandments. So from that we have a promise made to these people about inheriting the land forever. And over in Hebrews 11, it talks about that these men, they dwelt in tents waiting for the promise to come. And then in Hebrews 11 verse 13 it says, these all died in faith, not having received the promise, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them and embraced them. These men died in faith, understanding that the promises were to come. You might think that because we're talking about these promises and the seed of Isaac, that only certain people might be involved to be part of these promises. God's just not looking for people, though, who are a direct descendant of these certain people, or a genealogy match. We don't need to try and trace back our genealogy to see if we've got some small diluted part of us that is in our heritage that will mean that we are now part of this promise. The promise goes beyond flesh and blood. Next, we're going to look at a couple other key quotes that we find in the scriptures around the purpose of the earth. And they are on the screen here for us. So Numbers 14:21, but as truly as I live, all the earth shall be filled with the glory of the Lord. In Psalm 72, verse 19, blessed be his glorious name forever, and let the whole earth be filled with his glory. Amen and amen. Again in Isaiah 9, verse 11, they shall not hurt nor destroy in my holy mountain, for the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. And Habakkuk 2:14, for the earth shall be filled with the knowledge and the glory of the earth as the waters cover the sea. And finally Zechariah 14, verse 9, and the Lord shall be king over all the earth. In that day shall there be one Lord, and his name one. God's plan, as you can see from these verses, is the earth to be filled with the glory of the Lord. And what is God's glory? We have that answer in Exodus 33, where Moses asked to see God's glory, and God passed before him and proclaimed his name, which in Exodus 34 was merciful and gracious, long-suffering, abundant in goodness and truth, keeping mercy for thousands and forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, and that by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children's children. So what these few quotes have told us is that the earth will be filled with the glory and the knowledge of God forever, and there shall be one ruler over the earth. And what we've seen God's glory to be is linked with his name, which is good characteristics displayed throughout the land. Do we have one ruler at the moment over the whole earth? No. And do we have any of these characteristics fully displayed throughout the whole earth? So this event is still to come. Let's move on to another passage that shows a bit more about the world's leadership and a pictorial representation of what will happen on the earth. We want to move over to Daniel 2. So in Daniel 2, we are not going to look at the whole events of Daniel 2, but we're definitely going to pull out a few of the verses and build up a key point to get the picture of the chapter and what's going on here. So we're introduced in the start of Daniel 2 to a king called Nebuchadnezzar, and he was in his second year of his reign over Babylon. And the king at the start of the chapter had a dream, and this dream troubled him considerably, but he couldn't remember he didn't fully remember what the dream was, and he asked his wise men to tell him what the dream was and then to interpret the dream for him. But his wise men said, well, that's impossible to tell you what you dreamed of and then to interpret it. Can you tell us what it was, and then we'll give you an interpretation. So the king was upset about that and went out to try and kill all the wise men of the land, as they weren't able to help him with his dream and his interpretation. So then came along a person called Daniel, who asked the king for some extra time and prayed to the God of heaven to be given the information around what the dream was and its interpretation. And after earnest prayer from Daniel, God gave him the dream and the interpretation to tell the king. So we'll pick up that section from verse 31. So, thou, O king, sawest and behold a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. The image head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, and his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, and his feet part iron and part clay. Thou sawest till the stone that was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet, that were of iron and clay, and brake them in pieces. Then was the iron and the clay and the brass, the silver, the gold, broken to pieces together, and became like a chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them, and the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. This is the dream, and we will tell you the interpretation thereof before the king. And we see then in verse 38 his interpretation. And whatsoever the children of man dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of heaven, hath God given into thine hand, and hath made thee ruler over them all. Thou art this head of gold. So we see here that in the image representation that Nebuchadnezzar was the head of gold, and then in verse 39 it talks about there will be another kingdom arise inferior to thee, and a third kingdom, and then it will continue on as the image goes down. But as we go down the image, the materials become weaker and more unstable, and the world powers become less powerful as they start to have there's more. But as we go down the image, the materials become weaker and unstable. The world powers become less powerful, and they start to, as there's more power, more leaders in the world that have their own agenda and their own world plans to try and dominate. We look at the current top 10 superpowers of 2023 in the world around us, and we can see that that there's definitely a current struggle for world domination. So the top 10 at the moment are the USA, China, Russia, Germany, UK, Japan, France, South Korea, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. I think it's really easy to see that these current superpowers of the world are, with each having various beliefs and agendas, they're struggling to be on the same page with lots of key and pressing issues. There's nothing like a stable leadership of having one leader, like the days of Daniel here, when they just had the head of gold. To finish off the prophecy, we do the the dream, we see in verse 43 that, sorry, not in verse 43, in verse 43, that whereas thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay, that they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. How the world leaders today don't mix well together, and they don't have one agenda for the earth. I would say over the last few years that this has definitely become more significant with the changes in the world that we live in, and then becoming more fragile leadership. So when we see the world around us and the leadership as it is in verse 43, we then come into verse 44, which says, "And in the days of these kings being plural, shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. For as much as thou sawest that a stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it brake in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God hath made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter. And the dream is certain, and the interpretation is sure." And to finish off that section, we see that the king did fall down on his face and worship Daniel, as this was the dream that he had had. So we can see from the image in front of us that there's, and next to the materials on the image, the different powers throughout the history that correlate with the metals. And if you look further into the history and the metals, there are significant ties between both why those metals are mentioned, or these materials are mentioned. So if Babylon was the head of gold, then we go through time, through the Medo-Persians, then the Greeks, the Romans, and the fall of Rome. It's now the current time period we're in. And what's left to fulfill the situation and to fulfill the dream is the stone to come. So in the days of the kings of the feet and the toes, the world order of powers will change, and it will be very different to what the earth has ever seen. The world leadership has just been the same, really, for the whole time of the image, basically built on the same frameworks, the same morals, cut from a very similar mould. But when God intervenes, it'll be very different. This stone isn't at all part of the image. It's not cut from the same mould. It's a stone that's cut without human hands from the mountain, and it comes and hits the image at the feet, the weakest part, and it collapses and breaks into pieces, and the image is ground, and the world order is ground like the chaff of the summer threshing floor, with no single piece left that's recognisable. Not a single bit of the current world system will be left, and it'll be totally thrown upside down. And the rock comes and it grows, and the stone becomes a mountain that fills the whole earth with its leadership and power. When the rock comes and changes the world order, not everyone will just be able to be a part of it, though. We've seen throughout the years and leadership changes that not everyone can just walk into the new leadership. There's wars and there's challenges that are around if you don't comply to the new world order, that you'll die. So we see that earlier that God wanted to fill the earth with his glory, and that was his plan. Now if we turn back to our reading tonight, we start to look at what the Bible states about those that will be there in the time of the kingdom. So Psalm 37. I'm just going to pick up a few key passages out of this psalm that talk about those that will be on the earth in the kingdom. So Psalm 37 verse 9 to 11. For evildoers shall be cut off, but those that wait upon the Lord, they shall inherit the earth. For yet a little while, and the wicked shall not be, yea, they shall diligently consider his place, and it shall not be. But the meek shall inherit the earth, and shall delight themselves in the abundance of peace. And verse 18, the Lord knows the days of the upright, and their inheritance shall be forever. Verse 22, for such as be blessed of him shall inherit the earth, and they that be cursed shall be cut off. Verse 29, the righteous shall inherit the land and dwell therein forever. And verse 34, wait on the Lord and keep his ways, and he shall exalt thee to inherit the land when the wicked are cut off, and they shall see it. Just in this psalm we can see that the wicked will be cut off, and that they that are upright and that follow God's ways will inherit the land. Now we could say that, maybe this is just this psalm is talking about this, but we can see throughout the Bible there's many other passages that talk about this. So Psalm 125, verse 1, it says, those that trust in the Lord shall be as Mount Zion that cannot be removed and abide forever. Psalm 145, verse 20, God preserves those that love him, and the wicked are destroyed. Let's move over to Proverbs 2. Proverbs 2. And verse 21. For the upright shall dwell in the land, and the perfect shall remain in it. But the wicked shall be cut off of the earth, and the transgression shall be rooted out of it. And while we're in Proverbs, again, we've got Proverbs 10, verse 25. As the whirlwind passeth, so is the wicked no more, but the righteous is an everlasting foundation. And the verse 30, the righteous shall never be removed, but the wicked shall not inherit the earth. And we can consider more passages up where Proverbs 12, and a couple of times in Proverbs 12 where the wicked are overthrown, but the house of the righteous shall stand. And Proverbs 12:28, the way of the righteousness is life, the pathway, and in the pathway thereof is no death. In Isaiah 60, talks about the people. Thy people also shall be all righteous. They shall inherit the land forever. Matthew 5, the meek shall inherit the earth. Revelation 5 talks about we shall reign on the earth and be kings and priests. Those that display the characteristics of God today are those that will inherit the earth. Those that will be a part of the promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, those who love him, will be preserved at the day of judgment. With the image of Daniel in mind, there will be a change in world leadership, a change that is very different to what the world knows and has seen so far, the kingdom of God on earth. In the well-known words of the Lord's Prayer in Matthew 6, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. God's purpose with the earth explained. We've seen that in creation, the earth wasn't a short-term goal, creating the earth. It wasn't created to then be destroyed by those who are on it. It was created to be inhabited, but not just inhabited by anyone, not to be inhabited by anyone, but by people who love God and display those characteristics in their lives. God's glory to cover the earth. We had a look at the image of Daniel and how the image represents different time periods and how the world leads us through those times. And that today we're in the times of the feet where there is a mixed leadership, which we're in the days of the feet at the moment. It's a fragile world order where everyone has their own agenda and is pushing their own goals. And in that time, in the days of those kings, a stone will come and specifically hit that image at the feet and at its weakest point. And the image will fall and it will be destroyed. And all those nations will fall and be consumed by the stone from that mountain. Judgment will happen, and there will be two ways to go. The righteous inherit the earth, and we have the opportunity now to change our lives so that we can be part of filling the earth with God's glory, to be part of the kingdom, having dominion over everything that moves. We've seen that God does have a plan with the earth. The earth was formed to be inhabited, not destructed. When we think about what the purpose of life is and trying to make a mark on the world around us, remember the world that we're standing on. Think about the earth that you are walking on. When we hear about the potential destruction of the world and the changes, the irreversible changes that we're making, think that God's plan for the earth was that the earth was to be inhabited. God can change the earth. God created the earth not in vain. And we can be a part of that promise and that plan. So today is the day that we need to make the change, though, because we are in the days of these kings when the stone shall come.